Hello, welcome back to This Is My Story, your unofficial Hearts podcast. This is something a wee bit different for us. As you will have seen on social media, we have spent the last couple of days interviewing the potential candidates for the Foundation of Hearts, which has been superb. This is a wee mini series with the interviews with all five of them. We have to say straight away that thanks to all five for taking part. It was amazing to get the time to talk to them. Every single one of them impressed us. It was myself and Ando that got the time to sit down and talk to them, and each person brings something unique to the table, has great ideas and great visions for where they want the club to go and how they want the Foundation of Hearts to work. The reason that we reached out to them to do them is because obviously we're Hearts fans, and you know what we're like on the podcast. We're heavily opinionated, and the whole point being fan owned is that we have this vehicle, we have this opportunity where we can vote on and off the candidates that we want, that we think best represent us, best represent the way we want the club to go. And that's why we thought, right, well, we're all big enough to stand outside Tynecastle with our bed sheets telling people we want them off the board. Then we need to, for that big enough to do that, then we need to get involved in the voting process and make sure that the right candidates are put forward. So the AGM for the Foundation of Hearts is on the 16th of December. The Foundation of Hearts messaged all pledgers to tell them of the process, and as of the 12th of October, I think it was, or round about then, basically all of the candidates had to submit their applications to be considered, and the five candidates that went through, that were successful and that go through to the vote, are Andrew Brown, Jerry Mallon, Brian Muir, Graham Robertson and Louise Strutt. Louise Strutt is an existing director and is standing for re-election. So again, you can go onto the Foundation of Hearts website and have a look at, I think they've got individual profiles of basically a little bit about them. You'll have seen bits here and there over social media as to what they're all about. But yeah, if you've got the time, dive on, have a read, see which candidate you like, and then listen and hear what they have to say in this wee mini series. And when you want to vote, and when the voting's open, you would just go to the foundationofhearts.org/election-address-2021. So in no particular order, here are your interviews. Cheers. Hi Louise, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out to talk about the wonderful things that are happening at Hearts right now. It's been some season, some journey so far, hasn't it?
It has. It's been really good, both on the field and off. It's been, it's pretty good. It's a feel-good factor. As a Hearts fan, I'm always a wee bit nervous. When's it going to stop?
I know. I think we're just, all of us are, that's ingrained in us, isn't it? Just waiting for the freight train to smash us. But again, it's a good thing to talk about to start with, actually, because especially when obviously we're here to discuss the Foundation of Hearts and your role within it. They obviously, is it the 16th of December or whatever, we've got the votes where we get the opportunity to nominate two new people onto the board. But again, like you said, right now we seem to be in a sort of cycle of just positive news. You know, we started the season well. We sold record number of season tickets. You're then looking at the fan ownership becomes reality. We get all the good news and feel good factors around that. Then performances on the park, winning every week. We're taking nearly 4,000 fans to Motherwell. Football's a funny old game, because if you think almost a year ago we had 1,000 people outside Tynecastle demanding that. No, but I wasn't there. Just that I've been told that there was I've been told there was people outside. But for your point of view from the Foundation of Hearts, that is makes your job dead easy, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I think because quite often, it's funny you say that. You know, we're a club that you were born out. I suppose Foundation was born out of chaos and crisis. And I suppose to a certain extent, our pledges, I think a lot of fans think they should represent what's happening on the park and what's not. And it's fair to say that when we are doing well and good news stories are coming out of the club, of course our pledges go up. However, the reverse can be true as well, because when we were unfairly demoted last year, of course, actually our pledges reached record numbers. And I think now we've announced recently we're sitting at about 8,700 pledgers, and that's more than we've ever had, which is phenomenal. I don't think that's just because of what's happening on the park, which is great. No Hearts fan is going to complain about that. We're playing some absolutely delightful football at the minute to watch. But I think it really does come down to the building of where the club has come from in the last few years. Certainly since Anne took the helm, and indeed since the funding from the foundation has been going into the club, along with obviously our benefactors. Bad news stories quite often can help us as well. We have got the best fans in Scotland. I'll say that time and time again, because I've seen time and time again how many of our fans step up to help when we need them the most, especially at the start of the foundation. You know, the pledges we had were just phenomenal. But even on the back of, bad news stories, if you like, things not going quite so well, being demoted last year, our fans stepped up again. And make no mistake, you've all will have seen the news this week that we announced our financial statements, where we've actually still managed to make a 2 million profit. That is on the back of the strength of this club, and that comes from the foot soldiers that sit in the stands right through to those that are playing. So for me, I think good news doesn't necessarily make it easier, but what we do need to do is capitalise when we are in this position, which I think we are now doing. So yeah, I never see it as an easy task. It doesn't matter if it's, don't get me wrong, when you see the results and you think, oh God, when you're sitting at Tynecastle and we've just been beaten and you're walking out thinking, oh God, how many emails am I going back to tonight? But I think one of the points you mentioned there is really valid, and it's something that I need to talk about a lot more. And it's interesting when you say, if we've not won something on the park, someone cancels their pledge. And for me, we've not done our job if that's the case, because the foundation is about the strength of the club going forward and the prosperity of the club to ensure it is here for future generations, and it's here for us to watch football, delightful football, granted. But if someone's cancelling their pledge because of what's happening on the park, they're not understanding what the foundation really is all about. And it's about ensuring that we can continue to put money into the club, to make it bigger, to make it grow. You only have to look at the backstory on the news on the Hearts website to what we've managed to achieve over the last few years since the foundation have been ploughing that money in, alongside obviously the expertise of the Hearts board and Anne, obviously, who came along with Bidco. But we have a lot of potential, a lot more potential, because more fans do understand, which is why we still have a huge majority of fans who've never cancelled. They've stayed with us from the outset. So do I think it's easy when it's good times? No, I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, good answer. And you get extra bonus points for saying demoted.
Yes, absolutely.
That gets you bonus points, doesn't it? You've got to say that.
Never mind bonus points. They're good to me.
But again, I suppose one of the things we were going to talk about here is, and I think you've touched on it massively there, is the foundation of Hearts and their concept fan ownership. It seems like a no-brainer. We sit here right now, like you said, we've got nearly 9,000 pledgers, all putting in various amounts of monies, from as little as they can to as most as they can. We've backed by season tickets and all that sort of stuff as well. Is it the fact, do you think it's been so successful because we've been there, we've been on the edge, we've seen what happened to Rangers, and the whole sort of white knight theory of someone somewhere will come along and save a football club and everything will just continue as normal? We were sort of on that same road. We were walking the same journey as them, and we kind of, obviously, we all like to slag them and we say we saved their club and they never, and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we were, if it wasn't for them, it feels like because we've been to the edge, it's maybe why your Motherwells and your Hibs and your Newcastles and your Brightons or whoever else are trying to kickstart something like this. When you're physically not there, and you don't, we were all at St Mirren, we were all at the last game, we were all at the walks, the cash cows, the bake sales, everything to just try and save the football club. The fact that now we've been there, and like you said, if there is a bad news story, everybody goes, well, do you know what? Yeah, I might be sick of Robbie Nielsen, or I might have had enough of listening to Anne Budge, or whatever it might be, flavour of the month at that time. They go, but I'm going to put my pledge back in, or I'll up my pledge, or I'll buy that ticket for Livingston away. that makes such a massive difference for us to be where we are, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it absolutely does, and I think you're right. I mean, I have touched on it, and you know, one of the other roles that I have is I sit on the board of Supporters Direct Scotland, who were very much sort of prolific in fan ownership throughout the UK. It used to just be Supporters Direct UK, but they have now split, and we have a separate company up here. And I sit on their board, and to give due to Motherwell, because you mentioned them, they actually were ahead of the game with us in terms of their ownership and did take ownership. And we've learned a lot from them. And working with the guys, it's been eye-opening as to how much of a passion fans have for their club, insofar as they're prepared to put their hand in their pocket and save them. And I went to St George's a few years ago, actually on behalf of the foundation, to do a presentation on where we'd come from. And at that point, it was probably about 4 years back. So we were still really going through the rigmarole of, you know, money was going into the club. We were then looking at the Bidco agreement. We were about to build the new main stand. It had all been changed. So we were still very much in the infancy of where the foundation could go and how far reaching it was going to be. And to be fair, we were still getting a lot of stick from those in Scotland that it'll never work, it won't happen. There were so many doubters, it was beyond a joke. But you know, I stood at that presentation, and it was funny. There was a guy on before me, God love him, Ollie, I think his name was, and he was representing Bath FC, and they were talking about their fan ownership model. And this guy stood up and he was so passionate, and this is my club, and spoke about it, and he said, and it's great, and we've got 625 pledgers. And then I literally went up at the back of him, and I put on my presentation was actually the, if you remember it, the STV interview, the STV broadcast, where it came up saying Hearts are in administration. That was the news that broke. And I had a whole video behind it about pretty much that was going to be the end of our club. And I stood there and said, you know, this is what we've achieved. This is what we started with. Here's how much we're putting into the club every single month. Here's how we've said thank you to our fans. And at that point, you'll remember we were wearing the third kit, which was, as far as I'm concerned, the best third kit we've ever had, which was the foundation strip. And I said, you know, it's not often you're able to put your, you know, your supporters on a strip, but we put all of ours on just to say thank you. And this is what it means to our club. We all stood at that game. We all listened to Scott Wilson saying, this is the last time I'm going to play the Hearts song. Not my watch, and certainly not on the fans' watch. And that's really what it came down to. But I stood there, and these guys were blown away. And I remember Ollie coming up and saying, "You kind of stole my thunder quite a bit there." You know, I was really excited with our 625 fans, and I said, "Our club has got the proudest history behind it, that there was no way on God's earth we could have allowed our club to fold. No way." And you can talk about any other club in Scotland. You know, I stood at Haymarket on Sunday, and I get filled with enormous pride at what we do to remember not just the fallen, not just our bravest team, but the fact that we make sure every generation knows about the legacy of our club, the legacy of our support, the legacy of our team, starting back from McCrea's Battalion, but actually talking about the community spirit. And I actually said that on Sunday to someone I was standing beside. Actually, I think every year we have more and more people turning up to Haymarket, and a lot of kids were there this year, which was really good to see. And I think unless you instill that within the future generations, which is why we've saved this club, it's why we all put our hands in our pocket every single month, unless we instill that within the future generations, they won't remember that feeling of crisis. They won't have the same pain you and I had standing on the terrace that day when he said, this is the last time I might play the Hearts song at Tynecastle. They're not going to understand that urgency. But the reason we are so successful is because we wouldn't let the proud history of our club, and for everything that Hearts stands for, and what it means to an individual fan. You know, what it means to me can be completely different to what it means to you, but the constant is true. We go there because we love our club. We go there because we love watching Hearts. We go there because when you walk into Tynecastle, you do get that buzz. You do, mostly you get that buzz.
It depends.
I mean, but you know something, even if you've had a really bad week at work, you just think, fine, I'm going to the game. I can get rid of my stresses. Quite often you come back from the game thinking, actually, it's just added to my stresses. But, you know, it's something that it pulls people together. It pulls your friends, your mates together. I love the time that I spend with my son. That's my quality time with him. It's a family-owned club, but it's still great that you see the boys walking in together. You see groups of girls. There's more females go to the game now than we've ever had. We're a community-based club, and that was never going to be allowed to die. And I'll say it again, our fans have always been the best fans in Scotland, and we prove it every single month when we hand that money over to the club, because we are the envy of our rivals, because no one else is coming close to it.
Exactly. Here. And like you said, I think it's a good, obviously, we'd said on our pod loads of times about COVID, and as momentum started to build, as we were coming out of COVID and things were starting to open back up, we were saying this is really a huge point for all football clubs. There's been people sat in their house, they've been starved. There was two ways that clubs could go about it. They could say, right, well, we only get 4,000, so if we charge them more than what we would normally, we'll get some money back. Or you could say, well, let's try and get 8,000 because everybody's been stuck, so let's charge less or whatever. And Hearts, and I'm not just trying to say it because of a Hearts podcast, but you look at our away crowds, you look at our home crowds. Since the opportunity has arisen for us to be back behind the football club, I think we've been selling out every away ground that we've played. Every home game's been a sellout, and it's like you said, it's a massive. It's not just because the club's been starved and we haven't been able to see the club. It's because it's almost like a duty now. It's like we've been to the edge. We know what it's like not to have this, and we'll never let it go. And Sunday's a great example of it. That's such a. I was going to say insignificant. It's not insignificant. It's not, obviously it's never going to be insignificant. But it was a tradition that happened all the way through the club's history. But COVID made it difficult to do anything for. If it wasn't so deep ingrained into the club's culture, and it's like you said, young and old generations of fans, that could have been something that easily you could have just went, forget it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can't do it or whatever. But you said numbers, they're growing. Next year, if we're back to a normal world, touch wood, that would, like you said, there'll be 1,000 people there, or you can put the webcams on and all that, and that just shows you everything, the history of the football club. It's not just the fact that we get to watch the team on the park, it's everything that goes with it that we want to protect. And that's why I think the foundation has been such a massive factor in that.
I think, well, it's good to hear that, and I think that's exactly what we are trying to get across. But we've got to be very careful with the fan base as well, because you're quite right. We've just been through a pandemic, and it's all fair and well coming out with a grand idea that we want every single Hearts fan to be a member. Ultimately I would love that, but I don't think necessarily making people feel, oh God, I really don't feel part of this club because I'm not a member of Foundation of Hearts is the right way to go about it. We have a tremendous support that plough huge amounts of cash into retail, season tickets, tickets generally if they're available for sale, which obviously they haven't been of late with the season tickets having been sold out and in each game being sold out. But we've got to be really mindful that people put in a lot of money into the club in various ways, shapes and forms. The Foundation's mantra originally was always pay what you can when you can. That's not changed. It certainly is something that's really, really obvious for me, that's the basis of how we need to still say that to the fans. They are still included. If you've pledged before, you're a member. You might not be an active member, but you're still a member of Foundation of Hearts. You can come back at any time. People have gone through probably the worst 20 months of their lives in the last few months. The most, they've all hit crisis. People are really, really struggling. We've got massive issues, with mental health, finance, so on and so forth. The last thing the Foundation want to be seen to be doing is, come on board because you're not a pledger. We want to encourage the pledgers. What we want to do is support those that are still pledging and make them feel, you are really valued. This is the difference your pledge makes. We do want to open it up to those who've maybe not considered the Foundation and can. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. And we need to engage further with those people. And also for me, I think my big driver is really to focus more on our younger fans and the younger generation. That's why we've saved this club, and they're not going to have that same urgency around, why am I saving my club? Because they didn't stand on the terrace that day. Like I said, we've got to find a way in which we engage the kids better to understand what the Foundation is about. The Foundation is our platform. It's the starting platform. It's something that we can build, move and mend to fit what we need to do to grow the club forward. We need to do that by embracing every single fan group, every single area, every single demographic, male, female, kids. We need to make sure we pull everyone into the club and make them realise that they are still a member of the club. We could grow it, absolutely. I think keeping the existing pledge is paramount. We do that pretty well, I think. I think educating people so that they don't feel aggrieved that, oh, we have lost today, so I'm cancelling my pledge. No, why are you cancelling your pledge? You cancel your pledge, you make a Hibs fan happy. That's what I say. So just remember that. This is about your club. It's not about anyone else's. You cancel your pledge, it's less money we've got going in to things like the academy, to things like the women's team, to things like mental health issues for maybe some of our players that we might need to consider in future. All of these things make the team stronger on the park. Everything that we've given to the club makes the team stronger on the park. Don't think it doesn't. The fact that we were able to give to the stand, would mean that the finance director would be able to say, well, actually, we've got that money, that's going to go to the stand. So actually, we've got this for the playing budget. We've got that. Don't think for a minute that just because the foundation pledges maybe specifically don't go on players' budgets, that it's not making a difference to really what we all go and see. It has a massive effect on that. There's so much opportunity at the club now, I think, and I think you're right. We are at a stage where we've hit a crisis, we've come out of a crisis, we've responded very well. What I would like to see at this point as well is, whilst the fans stepped up massively and we managed to manage that whole issue of crisis when we thought we were going to lose the club, you've got to take your hat off and do a massive tip of the hat and respect to the club generally and how we actually managed to survive a pandemic and still come out with a profit like that, with a club that is standing on its own 2 feet effectively, with massive potential. The fact that we can attract the benefactors that we do speaks absolute volumes of where we've come in the last few years, and that should never be understated. We are able to drive massive initiatives through because of the backing that we're now getting, and that's because the club has, its own financial strength has gone from here to here in the last few years, as we know. There's huge potential, but we need to bring in all fans groups, but I do think we need to be very, very mindful that people are still struggling coming out the back of this pandemic. We can't be forcing them to feel part of a membership just because they're giving us. You give us what you can when you can. That message will never change.
And I think, again, that's one of the biggest successes of the Foundation of Hearts, is that it's always been pledge what you can. If it was you have to pledge £15 or you can't, you're not part of it, then I don't think it'd be as successful as it is. And I think one of the biggest credits that we have is there isn't that culture. No one's sitting saying, oh, your opinion's less than mine because I pledged 25 and you pledged 10, or you pledged nothing so you don't get a say.
Absolutely.
I think it's been a great thing for
number one vote.
do you know what I mean? For the fans, I think it's a culture that doesn't exist in the fan base, which is great to see. Do you know what I mean? Because, and it's always been from the fact that nobody, it's not publicised. There was never a threshold to be a member or whatever. It was whatever you have and you're happy with it, give it to the club. Do you know what I mean? And that's for me has been the one of the biggest successes of it. So you touched on the future, which again I think is a good point to talk on, because you touched on it there. We've been a crisis club for almost 10 years. 2011, 10.
You're clearly way too young. It's been a damn sight longer than 10 years.
That's true. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about Chris Robinson in this podcast. I was lucky enough to be at the handover to the Foundation of Hearts, and one of the things I did is I screenshotted, went through, because I'm that bitter, to find I remember it being in the paper at the time, the address that Chris Robinson gave to the board to say that the club will die if it stays at Tynecastle. We've got to sell it, or the club will die. And look at us now. I'm sitting inside the changing room in a brand new stand as a part owner of my football team, thinking, 10, 15, 20 years ago, they'd never in your life guessed this is where we would have been. And it was poignant. It was poignant to be sitting there. So from a fan's perspective, obviously, one of my things, like I said, is we've sort of crisis mode seems to be our best mode. We all pull together. We all know what we're doing. We all get that buzz about us and say, right, we've got something to prove here. Now we are financially stable. We have a good foundation, so to speak, to build on. What does the future look like? Because, that drive to save the club for me now, needs to be, does it need to shift on to, right, well, let's drive success within the club? Because if, like you say right now, when the club's successful in the park, everybody buys tickets, everybody buys merchandise, people pledge more and all that sort of stuff. What does the kind of future look like for yourself, for the foundation?
I think for the foundation, you're absolutely right. We've reached a point where we focused predominantly on the last, certainly the last 6 years whilst I've been on the board. We focused very much on, my first board meeting, I think I've said before, was pretty much changing the BIDCO agreement so that we could put the money directly to the main stand, which obviously the foundation then contributed 3 million at that time. So I mean, for me, it's been a moving feast. It's not something that can stay still. We're still growing within the remit of the future plans. The club has its 5-year plan, the foundation has its 5-year plan. Our main aim, certainly per the website, as you'll have seen if you've been on, is we wanted to become a fan-owned club. We wanted to become the majority shareholder. We've done it, tick in the box, job done. Except it's not job done, because if we can achieve that in as short a years as we have and still manage to support the club where the initiatives that we have now are second to none. We have come from a club, like you say, of crisis that had nothing. We had nothing in the coffers, despite the fact we'd all just put in our season ticket money. There was nothing. Now we're looking at a club that has managed to provide we've got all of these innovation centres. We've got the innovation centre at Tynecastle. The new main stand is phenomenal. Let's be honest, it's pretty amazing. Like you say, I'm very proud every time I'm in the main stand now. I was always in the wheat field before, but I moved across because Anne built a tunnel there, so my seat was bumped. So I came over to the main stand, but I love it. The feeling of walking into that stand, coming round down McLeod Street, and you walk in, you think, wow, we've done this. This is incredible from where we came from. We've a new main stand that makes money. It makes money from the hospitality, which we weren't really making before. We've got a Skyline Lounge that's just incredible. The fact that we're a TripAdvisor review, and it's a football club, and it's our football club that's at the top of it is just absolutely tremendous. And that's a continuous income stream that we didn't have before. The club's done that. The money from the Foundation of Hearts going into the club has produced that. So your pound is not just returning a pound. Every time somebody sits down and has a meal there, we're returning something. It's money that's still continually going into the club. That's what we've got to get over. But we've managed to do that. We've obviously started to put a lot more into the Hearts women's team. Obviously, we've had a big change there. Eva's been brought in as the coach, which I think is fantastic. I think there's a lot more capability there, and I know the club are very much geared to promoting that and really focusing on what more they can do to produce a really good team with Hearts women, and really change the culture around how the women have been trained and so on and so forth. We have a fantastic community involvement. The play the game courses that they have for the kids during the holidays is fantastic. Harry, my son, has been at them over the years. Callum, obviously, who used to head up, Callum Sanderson, was just absolutely phenomenal with the kids. And the fact that you've got all of these things coming through the club again that pretty much had all stopped, there was really nothing there at all, is incredible. These are all things that can be built on. We're doing SFA education courses there. You've got all of the digital education for people in the innovation centre that's in the new main stand. All of these things are building the club. They're building the profile. But it's not to say we need to stop there. I mean, obviously the stadium's great. We're putting more money into the stadium. The revamp of the Wheatfield stand, even before we were building the main stand, has made a massive difference. And all of that investment will continue to produce money for the club, which again, it all goes into the coffers, which is spread out and can only really benefit what we see on the park. But do we stop there? Absolutely not. I don't think so. I think we've got so much more that we need to give. And again, I think that comes down to not necessarily what the vision of the club is and what the vision of the foundation is, but as custodians of this club, we're responsible for how we take this forward. And like you say, the one thing that we've all got in common is the love that we have for our team, the love that we have for this club, the pride that we have. And I think pride is something that should sit. I mean, for me, it's synonymous with Hearts. And I think it's something that you can drive forward. But if we're not asking the people who are pledging, what do you want to see? Then how can we possibly build a vision for the future? Because you can't just rely on 7 people on a board to say, right, well, this is the direction we want to take this in. Now, clearly, we're restricted by a number of things. For example, the club still run the club. There is still a club board for a reason. We are fan owned. We're not fan run. And that's so that we can continue to grow and we can continue to strive in the manner that we have. Otherwise, you'd get Bob in Section D trying to pick the team because he's not happy with Robbie, and it must be a disaster for all concerned, as we know. Everyone's a great keyboard warrior. The reality is, when they're challenged, you tend to find they back down very, very quickly.
I'm not one of them.
That's not to say that, the opinions of the fans are not valid. Of course they are. If we didn't have that, where would we get the drive and determination to move the club forward? So I've already said, certainly my vision is really to have more involvement with the kids. And it was great. We had the open day the other week there. It was, I suppose, tinged a little bit for me with a little bit of sadness because, of course, because of the COVID regulations, we could only have 2,000 tickets for the day. But my God, it was brilliant. We had 2 lots of people coming through. All of the kids that were there just absolutely loved it. We never delivered things like that before. We were never able to bring the kids in. So we need to be more face-to-face with them. We need to be in the fans' face. And to be fair, I was brought on not as a skilled board member, despite, my business background, so on and so forth. I think that's by the by. You should have the skills anyway to come on the board. But for me, it's about engaging with the fans. It's about being able to stand up and talk about the foundation to other fan groups and learn from them so that we can build the foundation and make it even stronger. It's about bringing in the kids and making sure that they're aware. This is where we came from. Here's your club. This club you love. This is what your parents did. This is what your grandparents did. This is what, this is what Uncle Johnny and the stand did. This is because he put his money in. This is what you've got now. So that they've still got that pride and you're building that pride in them so that they get exactly the same feeling as you and I when you're walking into Tynecastle and it's like, yes, I'm back home. Because that's how it should feel for them.
100%, absolutely. And I think one of the things that, if we look at the broader picture for Scottish football, one of the things that's always in the results of the financial statements that we put out earlier in the week, again, why is our door not being kicked in? We've got the most stagnant ownership of our leagues and management of the money. But a football club turned £2 million profit during probably the worst 20 months of our generations. We have record announced season ticket sales, pledgers. We're bringing our own money to the club, and the board, you guys, with benefactors, big business, ploughing money into our football club. Yet our league signs ridiculous deals that benefit nobody, yet the person's still in charge. I don't understand why other chairmans aren't at our door to be like, what we're doing here? What we're doing? Like, how can you make a success of it whilst no one else does?
Do you know, I think this might be one of those questions where I might
no, you can say no comment. You can say no comment, right? That's fine. You can say no comment.
No, I'm going to speak as a fan. As a fan, I'm never surprised by what happens at the top end of our game. And I think that comes back to one of my things that I do harp on about, which you mentioned right at the start, which is to do with diversity. And I'm not just talking about having a female on the board. I'm talking about having a skill set and a characteristic that's different on a board, so that you can draw on the strengths to basically make things better. And I think that doesn't just apply to Hearts, that applies to Scottish football as a whole, and not even just our league, all the teams below. Because really where we should be starting in Scottish football is here at grassroots and building up. And it all comes back to the education of being able to do that. Yeah. But I think the difficulty with diversification in our game is, for too often it's been seen as a burden rather than an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
And I will go back to one point that's very specific about where we are. You'll recall at the point of our demotion last year that Anne tried, I think, every possible way of speaking to pretty much all of the member clubs with a view to league reconstruction, on the basis that a global pandemic could be absolutely catastrophic for some, if not many, of the Scottish teams, and predominantly maybe lower league. And irrelevant of, they maybe don't have the overheads because they're not there all the time anyway, blah, blah. It's all relative. If they were bringing in income to sustain that and then they're not bringing that income, they're going to struggle. Yep. It doesn't take a genius to work that out. But Anne did try. She's strived to do it, and it was virtually, not got time for this, doesn't really affect us. And it was the old Whiffam, what's in it for me?
Yep.
And they didn't listen. And for me, as a fan, and as a football fan, and as a Scottish football fan, it astounds me that a lot of the clubs didn't see that that was actually, it was a golden ticket to change how this had been, how this could work for them and actually make clubs stronger, all clubs stronger, not just Hearts. It wasn't just about Hearts.
I know. We get that. And like I said, it's like the bigger picture stuff is what's missing. We could have. It, it's just so insular, the whole game. Do you know what I mean? And that's one of the things that we kind of like about the foundation, is the fact that it is heart centric and it's about Hearts, but it's not just about that. It's about community. It's about the businesses round about us, the next generation. It's about safeguarding the game. Not just Hearts,
Absolutely.
but football,
Absolutely.
because it means so much to us in this country, and we've been without it for 20 months. Do you know what I mean? I think where we are, you talk about the feel good factor here, and I'm not a massive international football fan, but look at the buzz and excitement the national team's on just now,
I
and you
know.
think, well, we're never going to have an opportunity to sell our game better than we do right now. We've
I
got
would
clubs
agree.
that are fan owned. You've got the great initiative. I look at Motherwell, and I hope that you guys do as well. I watch their initiatives. I see what they do, and I think that's a club absolutely at the heart of what they should be when it comes to their communities. They look after
Yeah.
their fans, and that I like all that sort of stuff. But then you go back 12 months to when we were saying, look, we've got an opportunity here to make change that's needed. We need to freshen this up. We need to get new approaches. Nah, you're only saying that because you're getting demoted. So, okay.
Well, do you know, sometimes it's the old adage of "I told you so."
Nah,
But
wow.
silence is golden. We've not
Nah,
even, yeah, just look at the accounts, look at the financial report. I
nah,
mean, it's phenomenal reading, and I think it can only get better for us. You're absolutely right. If that's what we can achieve during the quite possibly the worst 20 months ever, when we had limited income streams coming in. The sky's the limit now that the season's back up and running. Tynecastle's packed to the rafters as it should be.
yep.
Like you say, the away support are tremendous. I mean, it's astounding when you see tickets that we're selling. Slightly disappointing when we don't get the allocations that we expect.
Let's
Hey,
look
what
at
can you say? What can you
that.
say? That's not really anything that's within our control. But what is in our control is the ability to drive it forward. And every fan has the ability to do that, whether it's buying a strip, whether it's, booking a meal up at the Skyline, coming to the games, paying for your season tickets, bringing your kids to a Christmas party, so on and so forth. We have done that. We've encapsulated our community. You're absolutely right with Motherwell. The work they're doing is astounding, and we speak regularly, certainly with people from various clubs, not just Motherwell. Interestingly, just before the pandemic, I was in the fans bar. Quite often I'll be in there to sort rewards and whatever else before the matches. But we actually had the Newcastle Supporters Trust up to meet the board, to meet a few of the board. So whilst they all went through and had a nice coffee, I just stood with the fans and did what I normally do, which is what you've got to do. We have to engage. We've got to be with the people that make us who we are, and it is the fans. But we are speaking to these clubs. We're listening to what they're saying. We're giving them good sage advice. You're speaking to the Carlisles and who are worried maybe about how their club's going to go. You're speaking to the clubs that have already done it down south. Portsmouth were a massive sort of, if you like, influence for us when you looked at what they had gone through as well. But they've completely gone, they've kind of backtracked, and now they've been bought out by someone else. So that was obviously the right thing for them to do, but the fans were at the back of that. They were the ones that were able to make that decision. We would allow, obviously, our fans to do that too, because we've got, that's what we've spent the last six years on, is effectively the governance procedures to make sure that, you can't just have somebody coming back and we fall back to the ways of old. We don't want somebody coming in that's just using it as a toy, or just as a crutch for maybe another business that's potentially failing, as what we've seen in the past. We want someone who's going to be there for our club, that has the passion, and I'm sorry, but that someone is our fans. It's us owning that club. I don't want to go back to someone using it as a plaything. I'd much rather be where we are now. And is it rubbish when we walk out of Tynecastle and we've lost the game? Of course it is. No, none of us sitting on this board want us to lose.
Course, though, isn't
it? But you're following a football team. I'd love us to win all the time, but let's be realistic. But you've got to take things you've got to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is we are a club that is sustainable. We are a club that is involved in our community at all levels. We're a club that tries to do everything for every level of the community. We've got, the inclusivity that we have now. I've served at the Christmas dinners. I took Harry one year and we did that for Christmas, and we served, and it's a humbling experience to see what you can actually, what the club has managed to achieve, and how far reaching it is. It's not just about what is on the park, but that ultimately that pride runs through our club, which makes us stronger. You've got a memorial garden that's befitting of the team that are remembered within it. I know, sadly, a few people who've, have had to put their plaques up in there for people that they've lost. But I tell you what, to be able to have that in a place of solace, and I always find it slightly ironic that it's right under the corner of where the shed used to be, because I spent most of my teenage years there. Right. So, do you know, it's quite ironic that it's there, but how befitting that it's there, and that we have, our soldier up there from, our proudest, our bravest team, that pulls all of that together. You have, a Big Hearts charity. We've gone from poppy thieves to a charity that is award-winning in Europe. Make no mistake, we might not be competing in Europe yet, but our charity is, and they won against the likes of Barcelona. And the work that they're doing in the community is phenomenal. And not just for kids. They started off very much prominent with kinship care, but they're doing sort of the football. They're doing obviously the memories, sort of memory lane work that they do, football memories. All of these things are great things to have attributed to the club. And we're making significant headway in ensuring that everyone from the community, past, present, future, is involved, certainly within the charity work. We need to do that with the foundation too. We want to sustain the pledges. We want to increase the pledges where we can, because every pound makes a massive difference. Win, lose or draw, your pound still makes a massive difference. And if we continue to put this in, it doesn't take a genius to work out, wait a minute, Hibs, Rangers, Celtic, they're not putting in 120 grand a month. They're not sticking. Yeah. It's only a matter of time before things start to improve even more so. And
I think Champions League money.
Fingers crossed. Listen, I'll tell you, how good would that be? It would just be absolutely fantastic. I don't think it's unachievable. I love Joe Savage came out. He's in the press all the time, which is brilliant. But I mean, he's come out with the ambitions. I think it's great that we 100%. Have a coaching backroom that's able to come out and state that. That's what we are driving for. We don't just want to be middle of the road. We don't just want to be there. Granted, it might not happen this season, but if you don't have the drive and determination to do it, and you don't say it out loud, it'll never happen. So I love the enthusiasm that he's got around the team.
We had Joe Savage on here, and that was we went to Tynecastle to meet him, and it was the one thing I loved the most about him was, who cares if it doesn't happen? It's not happened for 60 years. Like, do you know what I mean? It's no skin off my nose, but I would rather know that I had somebody in there that was thinking, do you know what? Look at what we've got. If we're building it properly, nourish it properly, why not? Why not? And I like that.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's probably what drives me as well to thinking about what's next, because we've done a few sort of interviews and podcasts for this election address, which has been great because there just seems to be a wee bit more engagement in it, which I'm absolutely loving. So it's good that people are talking about it, because they're now starting to see the foundation a driving force in helping the club grow even stronger. But Joe came along to one of our board meetings, and I am just, I've listened to him before then, but I was absolutely blown away by, everything that he's trying to bring in, and not just for the first team. I mean, across the board, academy kids, women's team. But we all need to work together to make that stronger, rather than, the women's team are there and the first team are there and we've got the kids here and we've got academy kids here. We need to work together. It has to be more cohesive, and he gets that and he can see, and that's what they're striving towards. I mentioned in my interview that I had with Jamie Borthwick that I would love to see us have our own academy as well. I think the fact you said about the pride that, we were told we were not fit for purpose at Tynecastle, and yet here we are, as you said, sitting in that changing room watching a certificate handover on Heart and Soul Day, was an amazing moment. But I think, we've got the facilities at the Orium, which are, when the Orium was first built, of course, it was absolutely, it's world class, it's great facilities, so on and so forth, but it's not ours. And because it's not ours, we're having to share it, which means we're sharing facilities, which means we're not getting access all of the time. we are a driving force in Scottish football. We are in, we're in the top league. We want to be performing at the top level. We need to have top facilities all the time, not just some of the time. And that would help us massively, again, with our first team, physio room, the book room, everything would be ours. Not only that, you would have the ability to have a little bit more privacy up there in terms of what, even though the game's going to look like, the coaching staff would have a bit more privacy about what they're trying to work on with the team. There is, you'll know this yourself, the press are invited into training and so on and so forth, and they get to see what they're working on. But anyone can turn up at Riccarton and see that. And we need to have a little bit more edge on that. Things like them not seeing what our training drills are and so on.
Yeah.
We want to have an edge so that we are winning and we're still winning and nobody knows what we're going to do next. And any football team that's competing should have that. Your Rangers and Celtics, clubs down south, all their training facilities are away from any shared facility. There's nobody else going in there and using it. Nobody just walking through. We need something that's going to drive the club forward. It's something, again, that could be used for community purposes. It'll be used for the ladies team. It allows us to bring all the coaching staff together. We work stronger when we work together. There's no doubt about it. And I'm a strong believer that if we were able to do something like that through initiatives, whether it's through the Foundation of Hearts or whether it's driven by, well, it'd have to be driven by the club first and foremost, of course, but there's absolutely, the bar's being reset and it's only here. We've got so much further where we can take this. And if the fans just understand how much return we get on every single pound they give to us, they would completely be on board with why should we not aim for this? If Joe Savage can tell us he wants us to win the league, he wants us to be competing in European football, then why can't the foundation say we want an initiative, we want a new academy, we want to be able to do this for the club? How can we do it? How can we work with you to pull this forward? Now, it might not be this year, it might not be in 5, but at least let's think about it, because for a club like this to grow, we need to continue to look forward and grow bigger and better.
Well, you've convinced me. You've convinced me.
That'll be the saleswoman in me.
No, but it's like you said, that's class. That's everything that you want to be saying. It's like you said, we touched on it before. It's like you said, we're great in a crisis, but let's get our heads up. Where are we going? Because if we can harvest that energy from, we're not actually in a crisis anymore, but we need that urgency, we need that drive, we need that determination. Where are we putting it? Where are we going? And that's, I think, will be the absolute success of the Foundation of Hearts.
Yes.
Louise, thanks so much for taking your time to talk to us. It's been amazing.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for asking me on.
No bother at all. I'll see you tomorrow at Motherwell.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.